Welcome everyone to Carl's Conversations. We are back. If you knew what just happened a couple of minutes ago, you will understand why I have a little chuckle under this smile. I tell you. Live broadcasting, anything and everything is possible. Ain't that right, brother?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Listen, it is wonderful to be back with you. On the other side of the screen is my friend, my brother, and my buddy, Minister Kevin Moore. This is his third sit down with Carl's Conversations. It is an absolute pleasure. He's poured his heart out in the previous two conversations. And at the end of this conversation, I'm going to go back to the comment thread and I'm going to attach those two previous conversations so you can see, because tonight we're going to make a turn in our discussion. I was saying previously that it's not always that we like the people that we love, but this brother, I love him with that Jesus kind of love, but I also love him with that brotherly kind of love. And then I like him too. One problem that him and I don't have is the problem of being able to have a conversation. We can do that because we have a like past, we have a like presence, and we enjoy each other's company. And that's a good thing when you like the people that you love. And if anybody has ever been in a position where you love somebody, but you don't particularly like them, then you have an understanding way beyond those who've never been in that situation. All right. So you have an appreciation for liking the people that you love. And I like this brother that I love. We thank God for him and the sacrifice of his time away from his family to give us a little bit of time to pour out. And as you can see by the information scrolling at the bottom of your screen, we're turning the corner tonight to talk about after addiction, thriving, and life, love, and ministry. And that's going to be the focus of our conversation tonight. And the first two previous conversations, Minister Kevin Moore has just poured his heart out and told us some very truths, and some of them were hard truths about, dealing with addiction. Even though it was quite a while ago, some when they get to a place called sober, if we're not careful, we get stuck. And what I mean by getting stuck is we live in fear. In other words, we're sober just enough to be sober. I'm sober just enough not to mess with the bottle. I'm sober just enough not to mess with the dope. I'm sober just enough not to mess with my triggers. But I haven't taken the next few full steps of coming into a thriving lifehood. I'm stuck in survival mode. And when you're stuck in survival mode, you're dealing with the bare minimums. And my son described this to me about somebody who's close to both of us. And it helped me to understand what this person, he says, Dad, this particular person, they're stuck in survival mode. And that's why we see the things that we see. And when he said that, I said, you know what, son, you make a lot of sense. And when I put it into that perspective, it does explain a lot of the behavior. And so, but Minister Kevin Moore is somebody who is not just surviving after addiction. He is thriving in his life overall, in love. If you know him and his wife and them grandbabies, then you would know that he is thriving in life and love, but also in ministry. Now, we're going to talk about whatever he wants to talk about, but especially those three areas, I just want him to be able to pour out, because I know a conversation like this can be very helpful. So listen, for those of you who are already in the live audience with us, thank God for you. I want you to share this broadcast with somebody else, whether you're catching us on Twitter or X, or you catching us by way of Facebook or YouTube. Hey, listen, tag somebody, share the link, bring them into the conversation so that we can share all of this overflow of information. So, my brother, welcome back to Carl's Conversations. We're glad to have you on the platform. It's good to see you on the other side of the screen. And I do thank you for taking time to share your story with us tonight.
It's a pleasure being back with you. And as I told you before, even like when we first got started with this, that however you could use me or whenever you would ask me back, I would be there, for you. And I think it's important because there are a lot of churches and a lot of ministries that really don't have a an addiction ministry, or they don't talk about it, a lot. It's one of the subjects that's not really talked about a lot, but there are a lot of people that are in the church and they are hurting because they are struggling with their addictions. And a lot of it has to center around the pain or the issues that they've dealt with from their past. It could be a number of things. We went through that before about them. Could be the loss of a child or a loved one, or the pain of a failed marriage. It could be a number of things. Could be a health issue, but just like when you get that headache you have and you take those Tylenol, there are a lot of people that are in pain, and the addiction serves as their Tylenol in order for them to escape the pain, even though you're only escaping it for a temporary moment.
Mm.
Because just like with anything, when it wears off, the problem is still there. So if you don't address or deal with the problem, it's just going to continue to be there, to haunt you. And coming through this, and the subject of tonight of thriving in life, um, I said before when we first got on here that, I had been clean and sober for 13 years before I joined the church. And I was working the program the way they should. I was going to meetings every night, and going to meetings and listening to people share and talk about their pain. It's a way of setting up a foundation for you, because it keeps you encouraged, and it just reminds you of the things that could happen. But at the same time, there was that hole in my soul, as I put it, because I was still doing carnal things. I was still doing the earthly things. I was still had that what they call that I'll just put it directly. I there was this still that sort of stinking attitude
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
was there, because a lot of things that I was doing was, as you said in the beginning, it was just enough to keep me sober. And
Mm-hmm.
after a while, you, like you say, you find yourself stuck,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to make a decision to move to the next phase of this. There's a part in the 12 steps and in the blue book where they say half measures avail you nothing. And that's
Mm.
not only for your addiction, but that's also for life in general, even life as a Christian. Half measures avail you nothing, because if you're not doing this fully and you're only doing it part time or as needed, you know, as the saying goes, you get out of it what you put into it.
Mm.
And it wasn't until I joined the church that I was able to kind of move myself forward. It wasn't until I joined the church that my roots became grounded to the point where, like that tree by the water, even when the storm comes, you see storms sometime, and the trees, they bend and move back and forth, but they don't break.
Mm-hmm.
When the storm is over, they still standing there. They might have lost some coconuts or something, or a few leaves, but they're still standing there, because you now have a foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the foundation that I needed. Yes, it was good to still go to meetings and hear people talk about their pain, but I needed more than that, because I wanted to get this right the first time.
Mm.
Most people in recovery, relapse is a part of the recovery. Relapse is part of the process. Well, I didn't want no more research.
Mm.
Because for me, I know that I didn't do anything halfway. You know,
There you
when
go.
I was out there smoking crack, I didn't smoke crack halfway. I mean,
Hmm.
I'd go all out till if I had money in my pocket, I went all out till I was broke, you know, and didn't have any more. And then I'd go try to find ways to make some money just so that I could get some more. You know,
Yeah.
that's how bad. And I made a statement one time to somebody and they looked at me real funny because I said, I thank God for crack cocaine.
Hmm.
And,
I
you
understand what
know,
you mean.
the guy looked at me strange and said, why would you say that? Or why would you? Because had it not been for that, I would have never hit my bottom. I would have never sought to get help. And I probably would either still be out there or be locked up, or better yet, they might be coming to visit my grave on my birthday and leave flowers.
That's right. Let me ask you this. It's so interesting what you're saying. I mean, this is all good stuff. Was there a particular event or a particular day, a particular experience that helped you to understand that you were just in survival mode and that you needed to make a move? Like you have reference, you know, joining the church, and that was what part of what made a difference. Was there something that you experienced there? Because I'm trying to help somebody in the audience who may be stuck in survival mode, and you know, something that they can hold on to say, hey, listen, this helped me to pivot to realize, number one, I'm in survival mode and I need to get to the next level.
There was a weekend, and I guess I must have had about $400 or $500 in my pocket that weekend. And here it is. I've been clean and sober for 13 years. And understand that your addiction will follow you till the time they bury you in the ground. And I tell everybody, and people laugh when I say it, but I'm not joking. I'm quite sure when the time comes for me to be buried, that addiction is going to be whispering in my ear, you know, come on, Kevin, get up out the casket. Take one more hit before you go,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for old time's sakes. But I had money in my pocket and I was home alone, didn't have anything to do that weekend. Uh, and for some reason, that feeling was coming back where
Mm.
I felt like I really wanted to go get high.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I hadn't joined the church yet. The 13 years I had been clean and sober, I had read the Bible 2 or 3 times, even when I was in rehab. But I did it as a means of trying to establish some spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't understand half of what I was reading until I joined the church.
Mm.
And it was at that moment I realized that, you know, I knew about God, but I didn't know God.
Mm.
I didn't have a relationship with him. And it just made me realize that I need more than just going to meetings and listening to people. I needed more. I needed a stronger foundation because all of the people around me were still doing the same thing. I had people, friends, and family I knew that were still out there living that lifestyle, you know, and it was at that moment that I said, you know, I got to figure this out, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I asked God, please help me. Don't let me give up these 13 years that
Right.
I got under my belt because I'm afraid if I give these 13 up, I'm not going to make it back.
That's right.
And my neighbor just happened to be attending this church, and she lived upstairs from us. And she invited us to go to church that Sunday, and I started going to the church. And I never forget, people thought I was joking, but that neighbor finally admitted to me after 20 years that she did what I said she did. I was there one Sunday, and two of them were sitting behind me. And when my pastor did altar call and asked if anybody wanted to join the church or if anybody needed prayer, and we were all standing up, something pushed me out in the aisle of the church.
Mm-hmm.
And I turned around and looked, and I said, I know my neighbor and this other member, I know y'all pushed me out here in this aisle, because there ain't no way that I just stumbled out here in this aisle on my own. Little did I know, they said, no, that wasn't us. That was Jesus pushed you out in that aisle because he know you needed something.
Uh-huh.
And I was too embarrassed to go back and sit down. So I was like dead man walking. I made that walk up to the up the aisle to the pulpit, and I went ahead and I asked for prayer, and I joined the church. And just like with my rehab, when I first went into rehab, I was doing it because I wanted to please my mother.
Mm.
But as I continued to go back, it started to feel good, and it was pleasing me, even to the point where I got into an argument with my first wife because she got mad at me, said, how can you go join a church without talking to me about it first? And my response to her was, somebody in this house got to be saved. Because of the things that she was still doing, and the things that was happening. And I had a young son. So I had to put a hedge of protection, not only around myself, but around my family.
Mm.
Because if I go back out there and do this, I'm no good to me, and I'm no good to them. What happens to them? Because I know me, I'm going to go out there and I'll go out on the Friday, and they may not see me until the end of the month.
Right. Yeah.
And
And
so
people who
that's
never had.
what helped firmed up my foundation. And my foundation now is strong to the point where I don't care how much money I have in my pocket or how much I got saved up. The thought of me going out and read that is not an option. It's no longer an option to me, because if it does ever come back to that feeling, I know to go close myself up in the closet and say, Jesus, I need you.
Right. Let me ask you, I know that you are a dedicated, not only minister of the gospel, but I know even if you didn't have a license and a title, you would be one of those brothers that's just going to show up and make sure things get done because you love the Lord like that. Was it because of the ministries in the church that kept you busy and helped you to grow in Christ? Is that why you're so dedicated? Is that some of the things that help you to grow from survival to thriving? I'm just trying to get a little better understanding.
After joining the church, my pastor asked me to become a deacon in the church. And for those that are in ministry, and anybody in ministry knows that in order for you to be a good leader, you have to be a good servant. You have to be willing to serve. Take the titles away from all of us. We are still supposed to be disciples for Christ. All of us are disciples. I don't care whether you're a bishop, pastor, or whether you're an evangelist, an overseer. I don't care what your title is. We are all disciples, because he uses all of us. Look how he used the 12 that traveled with him for those 30 years. So basically, you have to do what you have to do, and you do it heartily, and you don't necessarily do it for the accolades.
Mm-hmm.
And they say that, when you work, even when you work your 9 to 5 job, you're supposed to work it as if you're working it to for the Lord.
Mm-hmm.
And that being busy and being involved, it also helps you spiritually because you learn. It helps to keep you out of trouble. It helps keep you from going astray. It keeps you connected. Um, and at the same time, you're there to serve as a light for people to see, for people to understand, particularly those who are still straddling the fence that haven't turned their life over to God yet. That if God can save a wretched crackhead like me, brother, what you doing can't be as bad. So there's hope for you. So you serve as hope, for others.
What you
You
said
know.
was so interesting. In my own walk, there are times that, of course, this load can be heavy sometimes, working in ministry, just trying to do right consistently. You know what I mean? Because it's easy to do wrong. There's no pressure in that, right? The pressure is trying to constantly be an example. But there are times that I think that if he had not saved me, I don't think I would be here. Not the crash course that I had with death and incarceration. I wouldn't be here. And so I am so full of gratitude, eternal gratitude to
Mm-hmm.
Jesus Christ for saving me. And then he didn't just save me, he called me, he sanctified me, he blessed me, he gifted me. It is mind blowing. And so that causes me to go the extra mile. And I would imagine that in your pursuit to please God, that you do think back. People who have never dealt with real addiction, active addiction, it's some horror stories that you just don't know. And so I'm asking you, when you think back like that, is that part of what propels you into? Because when you get to thriving, if you don't make a conscious effort to stay in thriving mode, you can sink back to survival mode. You staying in survival mode is not automatic. It takes some work.
You,
When
you
you
know,
think
you,
back, does it
you
help you?
can you can go to church every Sunday and still sit there and be dying. You know, and that's real talk. That's real talk. When I think back, I November I celebrated 35 years of sobriety.
Mm,
When I think back before that 35 years, I faced death on a number of occasions and survived it. And then I think about the 35 years of my sobriety, of uh, uh, being married again for a second time, raising my son, being involved with the church for over 25 years, being able to have retired and enjoy the fruits of my labor. So when I start looking back at the before, and I'm going to call that my Old Testament, and I look at my New Testament, it made me realize that, okay, and God will talk to you. And he said, my sheep will know my voice,
mm-hmm.
or know his voice, because he tell me all the time. And I won't use the word that I could say and use, but in any event, it's a street term, and it's directed at, he's like, look, I ain't bring you this far for you to just sit there on your hands and sit on all of this knowledge that you have, all that you have experienced. I didn't bring you from the jaws of death. I didn't clean you up.
Mm.
I didn't wash you with my blood for you to sit there and keep all of that to yourself. And there's a saying go. In order for you to keep it, you got to open your hands and let it go. You got to make room for more.
Mm.
And that's the thing that really had helped propel me and helps to keep me going is the fact that, okay, I know what part of my ministry is now.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as a minister, yes, I get to preach and I get to do all those other things. But I think a more important part of my ministry is the fact that I'm in a position to help those out there that still have yet to battle their demons as far as addiction goes. You know, that's a part of my ministry. We all look for what our ministry is or what our gifts are. And I think part of my ministry, and I understand and I accept the assignment, is that I have an assignment to tell people my story. I have an assignment to have those conversations with those who are straddling the fence. I have that assignment to those who have little hope to give them hope. You know, I forgot where it was that they were sending them, but when you think back to, I think it was it Jonah? Was it Jonah and Peter or Jonah and Paul were both given assignments to go to the same place. One ran to his assignment. He accepted it and ran to it.
Mm-hmm.
The other one tried to run away from God and run away from his assignment and ended up in a fish for a couple of days.
That's right.
You know, so I have an obligation and I have an assignment that this is something that I need to do. I'm not afraid to be transparent about my background. I'm not afraid to tell you who I was and where I came from. Because just like my pastor, they always say nothing good comes out of Southeast Washington, you know. So I want to be one of that, you know, exception to that rule.
Hey, I got to
So
interrupt here for a minute. Anybody don't understand that, Google Southeast DC and then come back and listen to this brother. You'll understand.
I have one of those shirts I got from Pastor Harlan's wife, where it says like DC Go Go. And when I look at all of those posters that are on that shirt, that is all a part of my culture. It was a part of my addiction. But I wear that shirt because people look at me like, oh man, what you know about all of that? And when I start pointing to this and pointing to that and telling them those things, that's my conversation piece. That's my icebreaker.
Yeah.
Because they look at me and be like, oh, okay, well, he know a little bit of something. And that's my opportunity during that conversation where I can say, and by the way, brother, what do you know about Jesus?
Yes. I want to deal with something real quick. Bishop Timothy Branch, thank you, sir. He said the redeemed man understands that service is due to God because he saved him. And you just made this wonderful statement about, you know, you serve because I understand that my duty is to tell my story and then to be transparent. Because quite often we don't look nor sound like what we've been through. You know what I mean? And just like you said, they see you with this shirt, especially the young boys, you know, they still spry, they got muscles everywhere, you know what I mean? And they look at the gray hair and they look at the few little wrinkles, and our steps have slowed down a little bit. What do you really know about that?
I point up here and I tell them, you see all this? This is not gray hair. This is wisdom and ice.
Yes.
Okay. This is my wisdom. And this is my ice up here. I don't look at it as gray hair, and I wear it with pride because there's a whole lot of y'all out there that ain't gonna get this much in your head because the way that you living, And my son, I had someone question me about why I sat down and told my son about what I used to do. My son knew at the age of 11, he was just going to middle school, and we had conversation. And I talked to him and tell him about my past for two reasons. I don't want you to go down the rabbit hole I went down. And I don't want it to be because kids out here are cruel. I don't want somebody to run up to you and say, well, your daddy used to be a crackhead. I want you to be able to look at them and say, yeah, well, tell me something I don't know.
Right. Right.
Tell me something I don't know about my dad. And if you can't do that, keep stepping.
Right.
But I want him to know and know my story because now he has two children. And there's going to come a time where he's going to have to sit down and tell them about their granddad. I have another 15 grandchildren from my wife's side that I need for them to be able to come to me and say, well, Mr. Kevin, what about X, Y, and Z? Or if I go to them and say, look, man, what you doing? That's not the way to go. And let me talk to you. They're not going to look at me as though I'm doing it as a grandparent, more or less. They're going to look at it as if, okay, he's been there, he's done that, he knows what he's talking about. This ain't just something you learned on TV or that you just learned out of a textbook. I've lived it.
Yes.
It's not much you can tell me about this addiction and how it works and how cunning and baffling it is, and the things that it will take you through and the limits that you will go. I remember the days of on my hands and knees crawling around on the rug, picking up a piece of lint, thinking that it was a rock.
Looking for a bump. And what we call it, a little bump.
Trying to get that last one in. But now I understand that part of the addiction was you're not going to get higher than you do off the first hit. Yeah. After that, all you doing is chasing the ghost, so to speak. But I also know that it can tear your family apart. It can cause you all type of pain. The pain that you will bring to not only your loved ones, your children, your wife, your family, but your parents, but even those that are around you. Now, the thing about that, being clean and sober and being in ministry, Jesus told the disciples, y'all are going to run into some difficult times and things, and the people that you're going to run into, you're gonna experience some things on my behalf. But don't let that discourage you. I just need you to more or less shake that dust off your feet and keep going, because you're going to be persecuted in my name. But just know that, I'm with you. I'm there for you. In the scripture, second Corinthians 12:9, where he tells was it Paul, I think it is, my grace is sufficient enough for you.
That's right. He had the thorn in the flesh. He's asking
Yeah,
Christ to
they were
relieve
talking
him.
about that thorn in his flesh. He asked God to remove that thorn from my flesh, but he told him, my grace is sufficient enough for you, and that my power is greatest strength for you in your time of weakness.
I want to ask you a question. When you look back during the addiction years, maybe even during those first few years of sobriety when you were in survival mode, when you count up all the losses, maybe the jobs that you lost, the relationships that were ruined, losses. Maybe you could count the first marriage as a loss, the friends that were lost, the how many of your TVs and microwaves and different stuff that you had to sell. You know how it is, man. You know what I mean? When you trying to get high, ain't nothing more valuable than that next hit. You know how it is. When you count your losses, how have you been able to turn your losses into gains when it comes to, going from that survival mode to the thriving mode? Because I think all of us who have been through active addiction, at some point, you got to turn your losses into gains. If not, you kind of go crazy. Have you been able to do that? And if so, how?
I've been able to utilize the knowledge and the pain that I have suffered. I've been able to use it to my advantage because it keeps me focused. It keeps me humble. It helps me maintain my humility. It doesn't make me feel that I am that much better than anybody else. I utilize some of the skills that I've had in order to use them on a more positive note, as far as having my own business, as far as using that skill to more or less contribute to or help me take care of my family the right way.
Yes, sir.
You
And you
know,
gain nothing else in the street. You gain people skills, don't you?
you gain more than people skills. Look, I took the same skills that I used to use to sell crack cocaine, and I said, you know what? Let me put my salesmanship and my gift of gab to a better use.
Yes, sir.
So I used to tell when I was in college, I used to tell a couple of my classmates that I could be your best friend or your worst nightmare because I'm a black man that articulates very well with paper, pen, and by mouth. I can communicate with you on whatever level you want. If I have to go and communicate with a billionaire, I can sit there and communicate with him. If I got to communicate with somebody in the hood, I can communicate with them. But you learn to use those gifts that God has given you, and you use it in a more positive manner.
Mm. That is great. I love the way you answered it. Now I'm gonna ask you something that's pretty personal, but I'm sure it will help somebody in the audience. When we go through the addiction, many times we lose trust in ourselves. You know that.
Mm-hmm.
And we lose a great bit of self-worth because there's some shame. After you get sober and clean and you look back on some of that stuff you've done, it's like, oh my God. And sometimes, because you're so out of it, you don't remember who saw you, who was with you. When it comes to you finding the wife that you have, and she is a marvelous woman, you married into a great family. I didn't say it was perfect. I said it was great. How did you get to the point, once again, going from survival mode to thriving, where you got to the point where you could trust yourself to ask a woman to trust you with her life and livelihood? And how did you get from shame to shining and having confidence in Christ and in yourself? Once again, going from that survival to thriving. How did you do that when it came to the love of your life, your wife?
When you go through addiction, you lose a lot of your self-esteem because you don't feel that you're worthy enough to be with someone. There's days you feel that you're not worthy enough to be with yourself. And I always say that, you know, when you ask God for something, be prepared for Him to give it to you. And it's not going to always be the way that you picture it or the way that you want it. God will supply your needs, but sometimes He gives you what you need and not always what you want. And there's a difference, because you can want something and God may not let you have it because He feels, if I give you what you really asking me for and the way that you want it, I'm afraid that you will hurt yourself.
Mm,
I'm afraid that you will damage yourself.
mm,
So I'm going to give you what you ask for, but I'm going to give you what you need. My wife, and God has a sense of humor.
Doesn't he?
He has a sense of humor. My wife came into my life, and she tells me, she reminds me all the time, but she was brought into my life to help keep me grounded and to help keep me on the right path. Because sometimes I have a tendency, I might stray off course, and she'll pull me in, she'll shake me a little bit, so to speak. But He gives you what you need in order to make you better.
Mm,
So her coming into my life was to make me better. It was to take me to another phase, take me to another place where God wanted me to go. Where had I been with anybody else, I probably would not have gotten there.
mm,
Had I met my wife, I may have still been a deacon, which I was content with just being in the background and not being in the front. But my bishop told me when we had the discussion, and he said, I've been waiting on you.
wow.
He said, I've been waiting for you, and sometimes God puts people in your life to give you that nudge or that push,
Mm-hmm.
so to speak, in order to make you not afraid, because God didn't teach us fear. And sometimes we get a little nervous about stepping out on faith. Sometimes God will close doors and open other doors, and we get hesitant about walking through that door. But you got to remember that when Daniel went into the lion's den, he wasn't worried about it because he knew God was with him. And he had one of the best nights of sleep he ever had.
That's right.
When the three Hebrew boys went into the furnace, they went in understanding that my God's going to bring me through this. And then then what did they say in that? There was a fourth person in that fire.
Yeah, the king was confused. He said, I knew we threw three in there.
We
I see
put three
four.
in there, but I see four.
Mhm.
And they came out
Unattended.
not a hair burned, the clothes weren't charred or anything. So he will put people in your life. And I love my wife dearly. And we have our moments sometimes where I look at her and I give her that look like, but at the same time, she don't know I'm saying to myself in my head, thank you, Lord. Because I can see where she helps to motivate me.
Mm.
And I learn even things from her because she's been in the Lord longer than I have. She was raised in the church.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that difference sometimes from people is that there's some people that are raised in the church because their mothers or whatever drugged them to church. They was in the deacon service on Monday, the missionary service on Tuesday, Bible study on Wednesday, this service on Thursday, and then Sunday you was at Sunday school and Sunday service all day Sunday. By the time you got home, you had enough time to eat and then get ready to go to school on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was people like myself. I grew up on the streets. I came from the streets. So I had to learn about God and establishing a relationship with God under a whole different set of circumstances.
Your perspective and your entrance into the church is much different. You were trying to learn
Mm-hmm.
the church and learn God at the same time. There are a lot of people who know the church but don't know the God of the church. And there are a lot of people who love God but can't stand the church. And you had to learn both at the same time. And so, you know, we have a whole nother conversation about that.
Oh yeah, that's a whole, as you said, that's a whole nother sermon.
That's a series.
Yeah, yes it is. That's a whole series.
I want to ask you to pour out like this. If you had a room full of newly clean addicts, at your feet, just trying to glean from something that you could pour out to them, what are a couple of things that from your experience that you would tell them to help them? Here it is, they're just coming out of a program, trying their best to hold on to sobriety, and they're about to come out of the facility and go back to their families or wherever they're going. And you have an opportunity to pour out a few things to these folks. What do you think that you would tell them?
First of all, if you're questioning or in doubt about something you hear, do your research. Because sometimes people will tell you things just so that they can manipulate you or just so that they can keep their thumb on you, so to speak. Second of all, like I was told, get into the back pocket of someone that you see and know is working the program. That was one of the first things they told us when we came into rehab, say, find the old timers or find someone here and get in their back pocket and listen and watch and learn, so to speak. The other thing is the fact that I had someone tell me the other day that we was in a discussion and we were talking about the 12 steps, and people don't understand and realize that the 12 steps, and if you really look at it and research it, the 12 steps actually come from God, because when you start reading those 12 steps, a lot of what you find in there is centered around Him. So don't be afraid to get into your word. Pick up a Bible and read. You may not understand. It may take you 2 or 3 times to do that. You know, the other thing is that if when you find yourself in trouble, they tell you to get a sponsor, things of that sort, but get to know people, get numbers from people that when you're having that moment where you're getting ready to go and relapse, or you're getting ready to go out and do something you know you shouldn't have no business doing, pick up a phone and call. Don't be afraid to call somebody. You know, don't be afraid to open up your mouth and ask for help. You know, now don't be like the fish that was in the fish bowl or in the fish tank. You know, nobody could hear the fish crying out because the fish couldn't talk to tell you that the heat was too high on the tank and that it was cooking them.
Right.
So to speak. You know, you got to be able to talk, and you got to be willing to accept help. Some people, unfortunately, aren't ready. They haven't hit their bottom yet. You know, and you find some people will relapse 2, 3, 4 times before they get it right. But some people haven't hit their bottom. They don't want to take your suggestions, or they don't want to listen to what you have to say. They still think they can do it their way. That's just like you have a lot of church folks that, you know, now this a lot of what I've learned about recovery is that it also applies to my spiritual life. You know, you have people that think they can just go to a meeting 1, 2 days a week, or, you know, they can just work the program when it's to their advantage. But you also have people from the church that feel like, I only need to go to church or be in contact with God for Christmas and Easter, and just like, you know, think, you know, just 4 or 5 days out of a year. That's the only time I need God. You know, and then they wonder why their life is still a mess. You know, as I said at the beginning, you get out of it what you put into it. And half measures avail us nothing. Can you imagine what life would be like if Jesus did things halfway during his 33 years of ministry?
I had to have all of them. You understand me? He couldn't do no halfway job with me. I had to have all of them, and I thank God for it. If you don't mind, I want an opportunity to do the same thing you just did. If I was talking to a room full of those persons who were just being released from the program, and this is just me, you know, coming off the top of my head. There's some things I would just pour out of my heart from my own experience. And I will say to you, first and foremost, be honest with yourself.
Yes.
You can lie and have lied to a whole bunch of folks. But if you really want to be free, if you really want to be clean, you got to tell yourself the truth. Because for anybody who has dealt with addiction, we're good at lying to ourselves. You got to tell yourself the truth. And if you get used to telling yourself the truth, then you can tell other people the truth. You don't have to run and hide from your addiction. It is what it is. And when you can live your truth, what other people are thinking, that's their business. You trying to stay sober. For me, and I was telling Minister Kevin this before we came on the air, you talk about survival mode. Right now, it is 8:57 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. When I was first getting sober, I was trying to stay sober to 8:58. Then that may seem a little over the top. No, I'm telling you, this is really my story. If I can make it at 9 o'clock, I count that a miracle. That's how it was for me. So that was me living in my truth, right? It just is what it is. I had to live in my truth. But I wouldn't give up on myself. I totally surrendered to Christ. The best thing I did during that time was to totally come clean with Christ. I came clean. I didn't come clean with a whole bunch of folks, but I sure came clean with Christ, and I came clean to myself, and that helped me. Some of you, like me, will have to have a total change of environment. Some of us can't stay in the same place. Don't think that's a sign of weakness if you can't go back to your same community, your same neighborhood, your same friends. For the sake of your sobriety and for the sake of you doing well to get out of survival mode to start thriving, if you're not going to do well in that same environment, leave. Who cares what they think?
Can I add something to what you
Yes, sir.
said?
Absolutely.
When you said that just now, it takes me back. You know, coming up through the rooms and coming up through sobriety, you hear all the cliches and stuff. But when you said what you said just now about environment, one of the things they always say is that if you continue to hang around a hot dog stand, guess what?
You're going to buy a
Eventually,
hot dog.
you're going to eat a hot dog.
Yeah. Yeah. I had to get away from my environment. You know, Jesus told Peter, I'm praying for you. Right? I'm praying for you, man. That after you converted,
and
that
you're
you go
going
to your brothers.
you're going to lose friends because where you used to get all the invites to the cookouts and the family gatherings and all of that, you know, you find out that you don't get as many as those as you used to, and that's okay. It's okay, you know, because some people feel as though they do it out of respect to you because they still doing what they doing, but then you have those that don't feel comfortable with doing it around you. And then you have those that look at you to say, well, look, he think because he clean and sober and because he saved and he in the church now, he think he all that. No, I don't. I'm still Kevin. I'm still the same Kevin in a way that I was over 35 years ago. I'm still going to be me. Every now and then, I'm going to tell a joke or make a statement and make you laugh. I'm not going to act as though I am that much better than anybody.
But you know what? You have to have this thing in yourself that says, so what if that's what they think? See, getting sober in a way is getting mature because you're taking responsibility for something that you've been very irresponsible about. Not that addiction is all about responsibility. I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to mischaracterize the sickness. Please understand. But you know, there's a portion of that we got to take control of, you know. And if people want to throw around that phrase, you think you know, you have your sobriety is a life and death situation. And when you look at it as a life and death situation, you got to make decisions that are life and death. Another thing that I would say to these people who are, you know, just about to be released from the program, you have to find something that you love to do that will keep you busy that's healthy. Is there something, I mean, do you want to get involved in some intramural athletics? You know, you want to volunteer time with some disabled veterans? Is there some ministry in the church that you love to do, some way to serve? Whatever it is, I mean, there's something that you love to do that's positive and healthy. I'm not talking about running to another form of addiction, but something that you love to do that engages your time. It is giving you some type of pleasure and engagement. That's a really, really big thing. And I tell you another thing, make your inner circle small. You learn real quick when you're trying to get sober, you learn who really in your corner. You know who is not in your corner? That person that's calling you, telling some man, let's go do some of the stuff we used to do. That's not your friend.
let's go to the strip club,
Yeah,
or let's go to this party. Going good and well when you go, the environment or the atmosphere
it's not
that,
conducive
that
for
is
sobriety,
not
and
good. It's not.
you got to stay away from people. Okay, maybe your trigger is depression. Maybe your trigger is loss. That cousin or that sibling that's always calling and complaining, talking about what mom and daddy did. That's a trigger. Stop taking the phone calls. Remember, this is a life and death situation. You got to save your own life. And what will happen is, as time goes on, you'll grow stronger. And now, when you get to a point of being stronger, you can go back and deal with them. I can be in environments now and not be phased that I could not be in when I was just trying to get sober. I could walk through a dope house now and wouldn't be phased because I've grown so strong in Christ. A week of sobriety? Oh no. I wouldn't have walked through the dope house. I would have took up residence.
Look,
Okay.
even when you walk to the grocery store, look, when you go to the grocery store now, you get out your car and you go to walk in the grocery store, and you walk and you get a whiff of what somebody's smoking, and you can walk through that now, and it don't phase you. It used to be a time I couldn't go back through certain neighborhoods because it would twist my stomach in knots
Yes.
just going back through that neighborhood, because it would bring back those feelings and those memories and stuff. But now you look at the environment and society as a whole, and now that a lot of things that weren't accepted or tolerated then are accepted and tolerated now. I be out with my wife sometimes, and we laugh about it. And we could be driving, and we could have the windows up, on your car, and
Right.
somebody just drive past you and be like, "Ooh, they
Yeah.
smoking that strong stuff." Or you walk past people, period, on the street, in the store, or whatever, and the smell is so strong, or so strong on them
Yeah.
that you can't help, but smell it. But you once you've established that foundation, those things don't really shake you, anymore. I have more time behind me than I have in front of me.
Right.
And at the same time, it's like the saying goes, there's a reason why the rear view mirror is smaller than the windshield.
Right. Don't spend a lot of time back there. Learn
Yeah,
the lesson.
you can't drive looking in the rear view mirror all the time, because if you ain't focused on what's in front of you with that big windshield, you gonna run up somebody's back.
That's right. Learn the lessons from the past, but don't beat yourself up.
Hmm.
You in your addiction, you did some crazy stuff, but it happened. I've been sober now since 1995. But let me tell you something. I got a lifetime of stories I can tell you of, before sobriety. Oh my God.
What they
But
say, a Vietnam veteran might, or a veteran might have war stories they can tell you. Let me tell you something. I can tell you some war stories
yeah,
too.
but
And it
now
ain't.
it don't hurt no more than that. It used to hurt, but it don't hurt
Mhm.
because now I'm telling it with the intention of helping you. You know what I mean? Let me help you not to go down that road. I was honest with my kids. And some stuff I told them, they were like, Dad, you really did that? I sure did. I sure did. Why am I telling you that? Because I don't want you to go down. Don't make that left turn down Stupid Avenue. I spent enough time down there. I can tell you what's down there. Don't go down there. Now, if you do, I'm not going down there with you. I'm going to stay right here on Straight Street because you'll be back. Oh, you coming back. You ain't going to look the same. But you'll be back. So we share not to be braggadocious or to try to make it seem like it's something that it wasn't. We share so you won't have to go down there. So, brother, I thank God for you. You have really been a great help, and I'm hoping that people will see this. For those of you who are watching it in the live audience, and those of you who catch this in the replay, hopefully you'll send this to somebody who can be helped. We keep thinking that we got to invite folks with the big names and the big platforms. No, you know somebody who's been through something that can help. And this brother has poured out with Carl's Conversations for the third time. And this is good information that can help you. I'm not saying we have the answers. I'm saying that we sure have some of them. We have some that can help somebody who's trying to get right, or somebody who knows somebody who's trying to get right and stay right. Because it's not just about getting sober. Getting sober is a great first step, right?
Mm-hmm.
Staying sober and then getting beyond just staying sober, but thriving in life. You got to get to the thriving. Once you get to the thriving in life, man, you living. We want you to live. You understand? Live. Don't just survive. Live. Because there is real good life after addiction. It really is. Real good life. God has so much for us that is just great. An abundant life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Minister Moore and I still wear some of the scars of those years, but it's all right. The scar's just a reminder. I got this big old gash, this scar on my hand, this gash. I was 8 years old when I had this gash. 8 years old in the rearview mirror. It doesn't hurt anymore. I'm pressing it right now, no pain at all. But when I look at it, I remember the day. I remember how much that thing hurt over to my shoulder. Oh my God. And my grandmother, with her fourth grade education, cleaned that thing up and packed it, never saw a doctor about it. Healed up just fine. But I'm looking at the scar and I remember. And that's what it's like when you get to the thriving. You see the scars and you remember, but it don't hurt no more. When you're survival mode, everything still hurt. When you get here, it doesn't hurt anymore.
Not only that, but survival mode will cause you to constantly try to hide things
Mm-hmm.
because you're worried about people seeing your scars. You're worrying about people seeing you. And there's certain things that you want to try to hide because you don't want them to know, or you don't, want them to see.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Well, look, brother, we're going to wrap it up. And I'm going to give you the microphone. Maybe it's something that we didn't cover, something that you want to say, just something that you want to share with the audience. Please have at it.
I would say that those of you who have loved ones, whether they're family members, whether they're friends, it could be a co-worker, whatever the case may be, those of you who have those individuals that are out there and still going through their addictions, when you see that dope fiend standing up and bending all the way over, looking like he getting ready to fall, and then snap straight back up, or you see your family members like that, or that alcohol, drinking the alcohol to the point where they stumbling home, or whatever the case may be. Don't look at them through the eyes of, look at them, they're pitiful, or they should be ashamed. Look at them with a different set of eyes as to, I wonder what that brother or that sister's hurting from. I wonder what their pain is, what's causing them. Look at them differently, but at the same time, be willing to help. There's particularly family members. We we have a lot of family members that, we all do. We all have a family member that's going through some type of addiction. And addiction ain't all the time has to be drugs or alcohol. They could be food. It could be a number of addictions that they're going through. But as far as for me, the pain that I went through was going through the addiction to drugs, because I did a lot of damage to my family. The good part was I was happy that my mother, when she went to her grave, she could go and say, thank you, Lord, because my son is clean and sober. I didn't give up on him, and don't give up hope on him. Don't give up hope.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Amen to that. Don't give up hope. Man, that's a whole mouthful. Don't give up on hope on yourself. And don't give up on hope on those people who may appear to be hopeless. I remember back in the early mid-90s, I would be on the phone with my brother. He would be crying for me and praying for me. I'd be talking trash to him. Man, what's wrong with you? Ain't nothing wrong with me. I'm all right. And he was just, no, bro, you're not all right. You're not all right. And he was so right. And, now we're doing ministry together. Our God is good. Our God is good.
Ain't it strange? I told you God has a sense of humor, because I have a couple of buddies of mine that I used to party with, and we used to hang out, and they in the ministry. And when we see each other, we say, man, ain't it strange that if somebody had told us years ago that we would be doing what we're doing now, we probably would look at them and say, oh, I want some of what they had.
That's right. Yeah, it's crazy. Well, listen, y'all, we appreciate we've taken enough of your time this evening. Listen, Carl's Conversations may be the destination for you and your story. It is the safe place to have difficult conversations. If you have an interesting story and you think that maybe it's your time to tell it, I'd love for you to contact me. It may be broadcast worthy. Maybe we can sit down and talk about it. If you think that your story can be an interesting impact for somebody, contact me. I'm going to put some information on the bottom of the screen right now. You can reach out. You can send me an email. You can hit us up on Facebook. You can hit us up there. Just let us know what's going on with you. You want to even leave a comment on the YouTube stream or out on the Twitter X stream, on Facebook for this broadcast. You want to leave a comment for us to contact you to see what your story is, and maybe we can schedule you for a conversation just like this one, and we could talk about it. We're looking for interesting stories that will help people. That's what we're trying to do. All pain isn't pain just to be pain. Sometimes your pain can be profit for somebody else. Everybody don't have to learn the hard way. I hate when people say, let them learn the hard way. Yeah, you let folks learn the hard way when they're hard-headed, but you don't let them learn the hard way just because you had to learn that way. Sometimes we can save people the heartache and the loss of going down the wrong path when we share. All right. I leave you with that. We thank God for Minister Kevin Moore. This is conversation number 3 out of I don't know how many more. I'm sure this ain't the last one, because
Well, I'm quite sure we're going to have some more for 2025. But I'm right here when you say, hey, I need you to just let me know what day.
Hey, man, I appreciate it. Well, listen, y'all, we're going to sign off for now. We have some more interesting things coming soon. We haven't set the date yet, but I'm going to bring Brother Damian Moore back. Oh, what a story. And he's ready to talk. And you'll be hearing something really soon about Brother Damian Moore. We're going to bring him back on the platform. He has so much to talk about, some updates for you. He's doing tremendous things. He's another one who has gotten from survival mode to thriving in so many different areas. Can't wait to get him on to tell you his side of the story. All right, until next time, be well. And remember, if you have an interesting story to tell, reach out to me. Maybe you can be right here on the platform on Carl's Conversations, a safe place to have difficult conversations. Until then, y'all be peaceful and be well. Bye-bye for now.